Hey, everybody, and welcome to Help Solve the Case. It is Christine here and trying to work out all the software. So hopefully you guys can all see me. Looks like we have a little bit of a delay. But if you're here and you can let me know in the chat. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Help Solve the Case. I am trying this in a different format. So we'll see how it goes. But yes, if you watched the Scott Peterson specials on A&E, oh my goodness, was it crazy or what? So many questions. I don't even know where to begin. I'm thinking, hey Janet, how are you? Can you hear me and see me okay? I'm trying a newfangled thing. So many questions, so many unanswered things. I don't even know where to start. We've got constitutional issues. We've got evidence that's never been seen, so many things. And I thought I could take the different areas and talk about them specifically, make shorter, not so long videos, and talk about each of the items specifically. Thanks, Janet, from the police law enforcement expert perspective. And I thought it was really great for those of you that don't understand necessarily what I do as a police policy procedure and culture being the keyword expert. It was good to see, just moving this over, it was good to see Nanette Toosby there. She's a retired Los Angeles, I don't know if she was a detective, she's a police officer, and she was there. And so she was going with Mr. what is it, Pixley, Chris Pixley, and she was going around with him and checking out the areas and getting the visuals and seeing that. So that was really cool, I think, to have her there and to have her perspective. And we had so many professionals. We had, I think there was another gentleman that had left as a prosecutor and had gone and formed another different Innocence Project, which was good to see. And just so much stuff, so much stuff. One of the things that really concerned me was the fact that there was a lot of evidence that didn't seem to be turned over to the defense at the time of the trial, and then things that weren't turned over at the time of the trial. They talked about the dogs. They talked about, some dogs were called, other dogs weren't called. They talked about witnesses. What about all these witnesses that supposedly saw Lacey walking in the neighborhood after the time that she was supposedly killed? What about no DNA, no forensic, we'll just say no forensic evidence found in any of the boat or anything like that? Not on the tarp. They talked about the tarp on the boat. What else did they talk about? They talked about the notes, the handwritten notes. I think those came in way later. They did the handwriting analysis on those, which was really interesting. And I'm just going through my notes here. But one of the things that I thought was very interesting, learning more about it, because I did not follow the case in the beginning, was the burglary across the street. And they also talked about one of the things that you guys hear me talk about a lot, tunnel vision and bias, right? And how easy it is to latch onto one particular theory and ignore any other possible theory. And we talk about only needing probable cause, which is a very, I don't want to say a small amount, but compared to beyond a reasonable doubt, probable cause is just a very short portion. And so once they have probable cause on one person, what happens to the other possible people or the other possible theories? Should they look at that? And that's one of the things that I talk about in the cases that I think you should always look at. Me personally, as I've explained, I don't want to have anything creeping up. I want to know that I've evaluated all opportunities. And so when we hear this thing about the burglary being held across the street, happening across the street, And they brought up the fact that when did it happen? They said that it happened on the 26th, but then other people say that they saw the van on the 24th. They feel that maybe Lacey confronted these people. We've got the bloody mattress in the van. We've got the DNA that tested presumptively for blood, but then they didn't find anything. And if you're not aware what the presumptive test is, the presumptive test is a chemical reaction that may indicate the presence of blood. And so then you take that area and you send it for further testing. So I know, they were trying to get new testing done, new technology, and things of that nature. And so I think that's very important. But what really kind of bothered me, and I wasn't sure, and I want to look at this further, is the fact I wasn't sure what the defense really did at the time. Now, there was, I think it was Garregos, one of the defense attorneys talked about how they felt that they really had a solid case. So, did they put everything in the kitchen sink in there? I am not sure of that. And one of the things that I like to do is to pull all the incidents. I want to know all the incidents that have happened in the particular area. Is there a pattern of things that are going on that might indicate possible other suspects or possible other opportunities? And we hear that was, hey, Sam, no delay for me. Okay, good. All right, thanks. I'm working on it. Please let me know if you have any questions and what you want to talk about, because I'm here to answer your questions. I'm going to do more case, item specific videos one by one as I go through this, but I'm just trying to talk about an overview of the things that kind of surprised me. And I would like to know what surprised you guys. And I know you've been following this for way longer than I have. But yes, to go in and say what else happened in the neighborhood and to find out that this van was found burned not that far away, in the same neighborhood around the same time with a burglary. And then the discussion, we'll say the discussion about the fact that this burglary supposedly happened on the 26th, but yet the media was out in full force. And would the media have recognized that, people were taking out a safe and taking out or doing all these things at this house while they're burglarizing it across the street? And, I hate to bring up other cases, but part of the thing that's going on here in Arizona that we have in the Nancy Guthrie case is we have media and we have journalists that are really paying attention to everything that's going on. They're looking at other things that have happened. They're talking about people that have people on camera and people coming up to their doorway and all sorts of things of that nature, right? The FBI and the sheriff's office went out and they got all the Ring cameras and things. Now, we are talking about way earlier, years earlier, what technology existed. But did the defense, well, first of all, did the prosecution do a canvass of the neighborhood for other possible suspects? Did they look at everything? Hey, Lafayette guy, how you doing? Let's see. Hold on. Yeah, okay, the water. Yeah, let's talk about that. But did the prosecution take a look at what else was going in the neighborhood? Are there any possible suspects? For instance, let's talk about a sex offense, right? Or a child sexual offense or a predator or a kidnapping. And you're going to say, right, as a cop, you're going to say, well, who's in the area? Right? That's why we have registration lists and people that are not supposed to live in different areas. But that's one of the first things that you check. You say, okay, who had the means, motive, and opportunity? Do we have a potential suspect pool in the neighborhood? Who is in the neighborhood, right? We've talked about, was it Son of Sam and parking tickets, right? Who was here? And I don't want to say ignore it being over there. That's just kind of crazy to me. So not sure what happened over there. I want to look more into that. Okay, let's say the water was like 4 feet deep where they claim he dumped the body. Yes, hello, 100%. Thank you. Yeah. So, okay, and I want to ask you guys a question, and I don't want you to get mad at me, but I just want to ask the question because I have the question. and I'm not that familiar with the area, those of you that are familiar with the area. So yes, they said that the water was very shallow. They also, I mean, I think the tide stuff, as I talked about when I went over the habeas petition, right? The tide stuff is very interesting that they had the one expert that was supposedly the expert on tides, but he didn't use the tides, he used wind. And now we have that new Delph, whatever that's Delph 4, whatever that is, that thing coming in makes it completely different. Okay. So the the point is we're gonna play devil's advocate on both sides. We have the point where Scott says he was, which does not seem to equate with where the bodies would have ended up. But what if he was not where he said he was, right? I'm just asking the question. Did they pinpoint him through cellular data or whatever? Do you guys know that? Because we have, in order to, I feel, use or evaluate the new tide data effectively, even the old tide data, we have to know where the bodies would have gone in, right? So what do we do with that? And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they say that the drive to the water was like 3 hours, or was it an hour and a half one way? So how far was that? So I'm just asking the question. Like I said, I'm just asking a question. If it was the burglars across the street and the van was found a mile and a half away in the same neighborhood burned, how, and now we have the date of death later, right, from Connor's gestation time, how would they get it over the hour and a half or 3 hours or whatever to the water on the 26th? Just asking. So I have those questions. Let's see. Is DNA evidence a definitive admission? Okay, what do you mean as a definitive admission? They had zero direct evidence of his guilt. They tried him in the court of public opinion because he was a cheater. Well, that probably played a part in the minds of the jurors. Do you know if they polled the jurors or the jurors cooperated in telling what they founded their theory on after that? There's just so much stuff. The witnesses, and then how did the defense decide what they used in their case and what they didn't? What should they have constitutionally been required to show, and what they didn't do? All those things come into play. That's why I said I think I'm going to have to take each particular area and look at it from the constitutional perspective, from the police perspective, and all that, because there was just so much of this. And I wanted to point out that we had from I'll just call her Investigator Tuesby, because I'm not sure what her title was. She said, which I love, it's never the same as when you get there, right? So I thought it was very good that they went out and they were showing these areas. And we've talked about this in other cases when they destroy the crime scene, the Koberger house, all this stuff, they destroy this stuff. And how can you get a real feel for what it's like? So I think that's really great that they went out there. What else do we have here? One thing was interesting. They talked about the notes, right? They talked about the handwritten notes. And I will tell you that as a police officer, when I was working on the street, we did take notes. We had our notebook. But when we were done writing our report, the notes got shredded. So we did not maintain our notes. And as long as the report was written contemporaneous with the notes got destroyed. So Investigator Tuesby had a different perspective on that. And I don't know if the court rules differently on that. I was an officer back in the dinosaur days, but that's what we did. So I thought that was interesting. They also talked about Modesto PD having confirmation bias. Let's see. I remember the jurors being compromised. Okay, how did they get compromised? Let's see. You answered my question. Great. There was at least one specific juror who came out afterwards and said she was going to bury Scott no matter what. Well, okay. So one of the things I think is very interesting for both sides of the equation is the jury voir dire. Okay, asking the jury the questions that you hope are going to elicit the right response so that you can use your peremptory challenges or, strike them for cause. Now, if people want to be on a jury of a sensational trial, they could not tell the truth, or they could, I don't, you know what I'm saying? So it might be very hard to reveal that in the voir dire. And then you don't know about it. And then people have these opinions and you're stuck with them. The creepy dyed red hair juror. Okay. Yeah, I didn't see that where the jury is. But so we've got a lot of things to consider here. We've got the constitutional issues, we've got the witnesses, we've got how the lawyers did their job, how the judge did their job, what evidence, when I talk about the lawyers, what did the prosecution put on? What did the defense put on? We're talking about the actual trial. And we've got the constitutional issues about what was presented prior to the trial, the exculpatory information and things like that. The one, I think it was Garagos, I don't know how to say his name, Garagos, mentioned something like 40,000 documents being delivered right before trial or during trial. I don't think that's fair at all. And I think we've heard about that in some of the recent cases. So I don't think that's fair. Um, yeah, let me see what else. And then okay, so we got handwritten notes. I thought it was interesting about Lacey, the possibility that she wrote the post-it notes, the handwriting analysis. I thought that was a good example when they demonstrated that about how they do the handwriting analysis. And I will just say that just because somebody knows about a potential weapon or a potential vehicle or something like that, it doesn't mean, right? We can't be biased either. It doesn't mean that they could not later be killed by it, right? People get into cars all the time with people they trust and people they know, and they wind up, in an unfortunate situation. So I don't know what to make of that, but I thought that that was very interesting, right? We want to have accurate facts presented at the trial. But I think they weren't revealed until well after. And so I don't know how they're going to rehabilitate, that constitutional challenge if it is a constitutional challenge, right? It seems like in that document, and they have tried and tried and tried to um, get things in there to get this overturned, and they're not succeeding so much. And there was another defense attorney, I believe his name was Hamilton, and he said something along the lines of, because I was taking my notes, I didn't write it down exactly. He said that he feels the denial makes sense for the judge. And I thought that was interesting. I would like to know, um, how, what he means by that. He really didn't elaborate on that. And I think he talked about that it would probably come down to um, something of a forensic nature to be able to get this redone or re-examined or reopened. But if they keep getting denied and denied and denied, how is that going to happen, right? So it sounded to me, I kind of got the feeling that this Hamilton, who's also a defense attorney, feels like the constitutional challenges and all that stuff are not going to matter, that it has to be new, compelling forensic evidence. But we've already seen the tides, we've seen the gestational stuff. So, I mean, what else? What else is left, right? Okay, you guys are talking. Let's see. Is the DNA an absolute ruled in? Gotcha. Um, I'm not sure what you mean. Is the DNA an absolute ruled in? I'm sorry. If you could just elaborate, are you talking about in this specific case or DNA in general? So I can answer that a little better. I have this question. What do you think about the lady, the neighbor, which what was her name, Karen, that found the dog with the leash and put the dog in the back gate instead in the backyard instead of going to the door? Do you think that's strange? Because to me, if I saw a dog running around without with its leash, without an owner, I would be like, where's your owner? The same as if a horse came running up and was, had its saddle and the whole thing was mounted and the bridle and all that, and there was no rider. I'd be like, where's your rider? And I just thought that was kind of strange that she would put it in the side gate because, I know when you have neighbors and dogs get loose and stuff like that, you just say, oh, come on, Spot, we're going to go home. But why wouldn't she go knock on the door? That is just strange for me. Did that bother you at all? Like, what would you guys do if you found a dog attached to the leash in the neighborhood? Would you be concerned about the owner or would you just throw the dog in the back gate? Maybe Scott was not home at the time, but Lacey was supposedly, well, could have been home at the time, right? So I'm just wondering, I'm just talking about, forget about, who's home or whatever. If you found a dog with a leash, would you be concerned that something had happened to the owner? Because I don't think a dog is going to get out with its leash by itself. Like it's not going to hop the back gate with its leash. I mean, unless it was intentional, but do you understand what I'm saying? It could have been a quick fix by her neighbor just making sure the dog is secure. I just, my spidey sense is just like, I don't know. Okay, that bothered me. That bothered me. Um, they talked about that there was 15 eyewitnesses who supposedly saw her walking the dog, but nobody had really seen the videos of their interviews. I thought that was interesting. And then we had the eyewitness testimony. Wixted, I think he was a professor, he was a doctor. And I really liked what he had to say here. And he talks about that proximity reduces the likelihood of, I think he was referring to accuracy, but uh it does not reduce reliability. No, I'm sorry. That proximity reduces the likelihood of confidence of what they saw, but it does not reduce the reliability. And I thought that would be kind of cool. Let's see. Normal protocol, definitely knock. I would have knocked on the door. Like, I just feel, okay, let me throw this out here, and I'm not being conspiracy theorist or anything, but here's what came to mind. Because interviewing witnesses and talking to people in both my personal life and my cop life, sometimes people don't share everything. And I'm just wondering, did she go and knock on the door and there was no answer and she just threw the dog in the back? Or something else happened that she doesn't want to talk about. And so she said she just threw the dog in the back. Like, let's say, hypothetically, she gave the dog to Lacey. And then at the time that this happened, Lacey's not supposed to be home. Would it have been more convenient to say that you threw I'm not saying she's not telling the truth, whatever. I'm just saying, like, I just find it weird. And I've seen it where people tell part of what happened, but not the whole thing that would happen. And I don't want to call her a liar or anything like that. I feel like it's weird. Could the neighbor be connected to the kidnappers? Silence of the Lambs, coveting what they see every day. I just would have knocked on the door. I would have been worried, especially, okay, let's talk about the witnesses, right? And like I said, I'm not going down conspiracy lane here, but you got the pregnant lady that everybody, all these witnesses are saying the dog was walking her, she was struggling, she was very pregnant. And you get those dogs that are pullers. And if the dog was a puller and you know that she's very pregnant, you live next door, and there's a dog walking around with just his leash, I would have been like, did she fall? Did something? I don't know. That's just me. Maybe that's me. Okay, I'll move on. Um, but going back to this eyewitness testimony, I thought that that was very interesting. I want to talk about the other eyewitness testimony that that I think what they were trying to get to say is that people seeing it at a distance, right? I don't think that they plotted. I think what's his name? Pixley was talking about getting this all mapped out of where everybody was in the park, where everybody was when they saw her reportedly. And the fact that if, how far away were they? And so this guy Wixted came in and said that just because it was far away and they couldn't accurately see it doesn't mean that they were not reliable about what they saw. So I thought that was kind of cool because I deal with eyewitness testimony all the time. Um, Pixley also said that he feels that the new evidence simply can't be ignored, and he wanted to retrace the steps of the evidence. Oh, okay. So then we have Toosby. We'll call her Investigator Toosby, right? And they were talking about this burglary across the street. And the fact that it's the proximity of it to not investigate it as connected to the case would be negligent, right? Her words, not my words. But again, I go back to I don't want anything to come back and bite me. And why would you not look into it, right? I think you have to question everything, and what is the propensity that law enforcement runs into people that don't tell the truth or the full truth or the whole truth, right? We see that all the time. What is the propensity that people can get things wrong? So, I mean, right across the street, all right? I'm looking at a case right now where there's a reported burglary that was committed, and the state had to drop that charge because they were unable to support the elements of that crime. But there was a burglary 2 houses down, right down the street, and nobody is looking at that case. The police didn't, I mean, they went and originally investigated it, but they didn't provide it for exculpatory information, or they didn't provide it in the discovery that they did a neighborhood canvas or anything like that. So on the defense side, it's like, well, you need to look at that. You need to see if there's, were the same items taken? Did it happen at the same time? Were there suspects? Like, did the police arrest somebody in that case? Because that person could have then committed this other crime. So I think that's important. Let's see. The dog dragging an empty leash with no owner would be a red flag. Hi to me. Hi, Ample Spark. How are you? Very much if I saw a dog on a leash with no owner, I would question that. Yeah. Wait, I'm a genealogist. Can you test bones? You mean, can we get DNA from bones? Absolutely. Yes, skulls, the whole thing. I mean, you know, not to be gross, but body fluid is better, flesh is better, but bones, providing they're not so dried out, definitely can do that. There's different parts of that. We do, unfortunately, with our unknown humans, which I will throw the number out, over 15,500 across the United States. And that's the purpose. One of the purposes of this channel is so that I can work on those cases. Grateful for you guys being here to help support and fund that mission. to get all those folks identified. But yes, with our unknown humans, because of the age of some of the cases, we don't usually have anything but bones left. Yeah, okay. Okay, now speaking of the burglars, apparently there were two neighbors that said that they felt that their homes were being cased. All right. So could the house have been cased? Could Lacey have confronted those people? It just raises good questions that to me need to be answered. I don't like having unanswered questions. Let's see. Oh, I thought it was very interesting. The lady, if you guys watched the special, I don't know if you guys watched the special, that the lady, was it the Jackson lady that they hypnotized her and then she was not allowed to testify? And of course, they were speculating, you know, that the police should have known better not to hypnotize people. I've never hypnotized anybody in my career for that reason. But in California, apparently they can't testify if they've been under hypnosis. And that was kind of being tossed around about the genesis or impetus for the hypnosis with that one particular witness. Now, I thought, let's see, doing good, thanks. Hi. Let's see, I'm from Australia. Hello. Didn't get the media fixation on the case, so I only know what I read in court docs, and I just can't say he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah, I don't know if you watched this special on A&E. I thought it was really interesting because they went to and showed a lot of the scenes, and that was really interesting. No, thank you for being here. I really didn't have an opinion. Like I said, I'm looking at it for you all, for my own personal interest based on how these court cases come down, how the police work is done. Like I said, it was great to see that we have a law enforcement expert working for the Innocence Project. A lot of people, even a lot of attorneys, don't know what I do for a living. So besides a forensic genetic genealogist, I'm a court qualified law enforcement expert witness who opines on what the police did or didn't do. And so I thought that was very interesting. Let's see. I'm considering including select YouTube true crimers as neutral third-party witnesses, investigators on my major anthropology project. Okay, awesome. Yeah, well, if I can help with that, we're also hopefully going to have Joe Mullins. I don't know if you saw in the community, he does the facial reconstructions with I believe it's clay. And so that would be very interesting too. If you wanted to have him on that, that would be great. I did. I thought it was well done. I like hearing both sides so I can make an informed opinion. I like that. And that's what I try to do here. I try to take all sides from the prosecution side, the defense side. I don't have the judge's side necessarily, but I can also, try to play the juror, although it is kind of hard to remove myself because I do know the prosecution and defense side. Okay, this I thought was very interesting about the memory. Okay, when they were talking about memory and this expert, and I don't remember if it was Wixted or the other guy, said that I think he meant the police and the prosecutors and the defense attorney said, and I started here, that you have to conform your practices to the way that memory works. Okay. And I thought that was very interesting because what he was getting at was the fact that memory is the best at the time that it happens. That's why written witness statements, recorded witness statements, audio written statements, okay, getting it down at the time. We have seen so many cases, I have, you probably have, you watch more than me, where the witness gets on the stand and then either the prosecution or the defense says, well, you didn't tell us that when you first made your report 5 years ago. How do you remember more now than you did later? Okay. And what this expert was saying that no, that the memory does degrade over time. And so instead of asking the witness to re-testify, to re-articulate what they saw, that they only thing that they should be questioned about is this accurate what you told us on this date and time? And leave it at that. So that's what he was saying. Conform your practices to the way memory works, not testifying present day that the memory is still intact because it could be attacked. So I thought that was very interesting. Okay, let me see here. Great idea. Okay, all right, right? So kind of like we saw in Tyler Robinson's preliminary hearing, right? They were talking about things that were in the report, and then they were asked to talk about that stuff today, and the memory does fade. So that expert would be a good person to bring in, right? One of the things that I consider as a police officer, right? I have to look at how credible is this person, how, from their memory. Were they drinking at the time? Were they under drugs? Do they have any mental capacity? Were they under stress? And this applies to the police officers too, right? How good, what could affect their memory at the time? And then on the defense side, because the defense to try to impeach witnesses, one of the questions is always, do you wear glasses? Did you have your glasses on? Did you have your contacts on? What was going on at that time? All right. Deseret hearings and hearings about the ability, right? So having these experts to talk about the way that our brain really works and the way we remember and we recall things, I think is very important. I think you're right. In general, sometimes shock can block recall at time. True. But I think what they're saying is not 5 years later, right? So it's typical to have somebody call up to us and say, I was thinking about it like maybe 1 or 2 days. And the police officer should maybe follow up, right? Especially if it's a traumatic incident, and say, hey, I just wanted to reach out. Is there anything that you want to tell us, or anything going on? Also, too, that if the person is arrested quickly, the defense investigator, like the right witnesses, if they can be contacted, right? Because sometimes they can't be contacted, to preserve. You want to preserve everything as close to the time as possible. But yeah, I thought that was very interesting. But sometimes people will call and say, I was thinking about it, and I forgot to tell you about X, Y, and Z. But 2 years later, I forgot to tell you about X, Y, and Z. According to the expert, that doesn't sound too good. And then the one witness, the one lady that was talking about, I believe, seeing the van and stuff. I wrote the quote down here because I thought it was important. She said, quote, "I was just telling the truth," end quote. And she was telling what she remembered and what she saw and what she was confident about what she saw, and she got blasted for it. And I think it's real easy these days, even as I talk to you guys and even as we post comments, to be able to exercise our First Amendment right to tell the truth. Not even just, I mean, well, of course you want to tell the truth. That didn't come out right, but to state your opinion and to state what you feel without getting attacked and jumped on, right? And I don't feel that we are so free to do that because of harassment, bullying, shame, guilt. I mean, all kinds of things. One way to help grow your channel is to participate in the chats of other true crime YouTubers too. I hope more people to learn about your channel and efforts. I appreciate that, Lafayette guy. Thank you. Yes, it's difficult for me. All great suggestions, because I am working full time on cases. I'm working on genealogy cases. I'm working on other cases. And so, yes, my time can be very limited, but I do appreciate that when I have the time to chime in, and I will take that and prioritize that. So I really appreciate that. Did you guys see about the fire expert guy, right? The Modesto fire investigator with the van, that he brought that to the attention, that I thought, because typically we see the fire folks as prosecution witnesses, right? That they're, I don't want to say on the police side, you know, they should be independent, but typically they get put in on the prosecution side. And I thought that was really interesting that he said he was deeply troubled. He was deeply troubled. And the defense was never told that the van was found and set on fire. Now, again, I don't know what they did, but I'm hoping it's not this, but I always pull calls for service that happen in the area because I want to know within a window of time what has been going on. And that's on the cop side and on the defense side. And so if they pulled that, we would hope that the van recovery would have been in there, especially with the arson fire. So we don't know if they pulled those or they didn't pull those or how they didn't know about them. But yeah, so that might have been a lapse there, something that they could have done. Let's see what else here. They talked about cherry picking the dogs. I thought it was interesting that they chose the dog that was at the marina, and then they talked about that dog was mistakenly given a slipper that was Scott's, or I think they talked about cross-contamination with that the handler might have had the scent of the slipper that it was actually Scott's instead of Lacey's stuff. And so the scent could have been commingled, and that the dog might have recognized Scott at the marina. So that was interesting because I didn't think about cross-contamination with the dogs, but we talk about cross-contamination in a lot of our forensic work. And then my thought was, well, if the state didn't call the other dogs, why didn't the defense call the other dogs? If they would have interviewed them prior, if they had reports and they would have interviewed them prior to the trial, unless they were reserved on the state witness list and they couldn't call them, because if they reserve them and then they don't call them, it's my understanding the defense can't call them on their own. And then, yeah, about what do you think about the confessions of the burglars and then they destroyed the videos? Did you guys watch the thing where they had the meeting? What was it, May 6th? And they had the meeting and it was the burglary team and then one or two investigators from the Scott Peterson case were there and they talked about destroying the recorded videos of the interviews of the burglars. Did you see that? That was kind of crazy to me because the only time with evidence text, right? The property room and the evidence text, I've never been called about the destruction of property because in the standard operating procedure, they should have either statutory destruction dates, they should have standard operating procedure destructive dates for just general, I'll call it general purpose items. But then specifically, if the case has gone to trial, there might be things from the judge about how long that they have to retain it and stuff like that. And it sounds like in this case, I believe, I don't know if it was after the trial for the burglars or it was during when things were going on. And I don't understand because, man, you can really see when you can see somebody and you can see body language and all that stuff, that's way better than a transcript, right? Because you can't tell intonation, you can't tell hesitation, you can't hear the Freudian slips and all that stuff. So I just thought that was very interesting. Let's see. Sounds like a potential Brady violation. Yeah, that was kind of crazy. And then to have the detectives from the other case in there, right? So they're like, well, the one had nothing to do with the other. That's what they said, right? Pixley was saying, the state said one had nothing to do with the other. I think there was only one guy, I don't want to say his name wrong, Bueller, something like that. And the rest of it, they said they declined to talk. But um, if it has nothing to do with it and you're not even going to entertain it, then why would you have to be present at the destruction meeting? I don't know, just weird. Because you always want to see it in person. Then it was interesting, just weird picking up on the interview. And again, I'm just things that were weird to me. uh the guy Pixley, I think he's what, the attorney, the journalist, was talking to divorce. So he got the original, just, is it the gestational age? Is that what they're calling it for Connor, the guy that did the computations and the testimony? And when he was talking to him, if you watch it in the video, and he starts talking about it, and they're talking about how they use this mid-range number instead of more breadth. And it was interesting, they talked about this other witness, expert, who gave more of a wide range, and she thought like she was good to go. She testified for the prosecution, and then they brought in this other guy. And it's very rare, to me, to my knowledge, that that the state is gonna bring in two competing experts, because, or not two competing experts, but two experts of the same thing on their side, because it is very expensive. So I thought that was interesting. And the first witness, the expert, the lady, she was like, yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. It's like, okay, yeah, that's weird. But when he was talking, he said he was describing it. And there's a point, if you go look for it, let me know what you think. And he said, quote, talking about the times, and he said, quote, it was right on the money when she disappeared. And I don't know, that struck me as weird, because your opinion is supposed to be separate from any potential theory from the prosecution and the defense. For instance, I was talking to another expert colleague at lunch. We were talking about that. I mentioned it about the Tyler Robinson case, I believe. Just talking about the independence of the expert, and the expert, in my opinion, and what I do is I'm able to give my opinion how I want to give my opinion. And you shouldn't be trying to get it right on the money. Like, it was just the way that he said it. I'm not trying to imply that, but I wrote it in quotes because it struck me. So I would love to know what you think. And then they talked about the landmark settlement, the Frank Carson case. That was like with this Brigitte Flatiger in Stanislaus County. They paid out um 22.5 million here, I think. Yes, in April of 2025, not too long ago. 22.5 million, the largest verdict in the state's history. And it was from, I don't know if it was from a false arrest or a pattern of misconduct. I'd like to pull that case. If you guys know about that case, um, I'd like to see what the complaint was about. It was obviously a civil case, and that is a huge amount of money. So I would like to know what the complaint articulated, like what the charges were. They talked about the fact that this guy, Frank Carson, he was a defense attorney, and they arrested him. And they talked about he ran against this Brigitte Flatiger, the either the former DA, or I don't know if she's the current DA, and he ran against her. I don't think she's the current DA. In 2014, he ran against her, and then he got arrested in 2015. And it just Tucson, Tucson pops up in my head, hearing that. And she was on the Scott Peterson case, is what I thought I heard. So I thought that was interesting. Um, Pixley made a quote here talking about unreliable testimony equals an unreliable verdict. I talked about what Hamilton, the other defense attorney, said about the judge, that he felt that um, he understood, that's the gist I got from it, that he understood why the judge made the ruling that the judge made. Um, and then Pixley talked about holding our public officials to account. And I feel in society, we've kind of lost our accountability in some areas. I don't know if you guys feel it, not just in the criminal justice system, but just in general. And yeah, that Hamilton said that it's going to be something of a forensic nature to try to do something with this case. So I don't know. I don't know if that helps at all. Like I said, I think there's so many different parts in this case that I would like to talk about, because I think we've got some constitutional issues, definitely involving the police, where I want to say, here's what I would have done. Um, Maybe some defense stuff, like if I was a defense investigator, I would have done this, and we'll see what that will happen. But yeah, do you guys have any questions? I appreciate you being here. I thought it was really interesting to give kind of like a bird's eye view. Um, it seems like this guy Pixley has been following this case for a very, very, very long time. And with the amount, it seems like the Innocence Project, he was stressing that the Innocence Project usually doesn't take things unless they feel that the person is factually innocent. But with all the stuff that's been thrown at it, um, it I do see some things that to me would appear to me, I'm not a lawyer, to be potentially problematic, but if they haven't been able to cross that bridge, I don't know what it's going to take, right? What is it going to take? So I don't know if there's any hope for that. Constitutional, is it guilt or innocence? Is it procedural error? Like all kinds of things seem to have potentially gone wrong in that case. And so what can you do with it, right? At what point do you exhaust all those things? So I guess they're going to have to find, I don't know what it's going to be. Let's see. It's very difficult to find an attorney to take on a civil suits on a contingency against the government if you're not a special interest group. Yes. Well, if it's a good case, they know that there's 33 and a third percent. Okay. Governments, in my experience, will typically settle if there's a good case, right? They would prefer to settle than litigate, because litigating is very expensive. So if you can present, and this is just my experience working for attorneys and suits that I've seen, if you can articulate your case and present your case that it's a slam dunk or a winner, right, for the contingency, or then they're more likely to take it, because that they know that there's going to be a payout. Or if there's an opportunity, if you can find a young scrapper, a young litigator, a young scrapper that wants to make a name for him or herself, they might be more likely to do it. You can also go through, what I recommend to folks is go through and look at the lawsuits that have been held against the government, and find those attorneys who are willing to do it, because the public does, I think the public doesn't realize that not all attorneys are scrappers and litigators and want to go into the courtroom and duke it out. Right? It's just not for everybody. And so you have to find somebody that's a scrapper, who will go to court no matter what the area, whether in real estate law or business law or criminal law and that sort of thing. But then, you got it. If you find the people that have already sued and have already done it, they're more likely to take it. Slam dunk rights violation case, ton of official evidence. Nobody would take the case. It's a serious problem. That's tough. Really, with zero professionals. Well, and in a rural area, yeah, I don't know. Did your time run out? Did your time run out on the filing and stuff? Because that can hamper it too. So, yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad. Thank you all for being here. Hopefully, you're finding some good information with the channel. Please always let me know what you guys want to hear, what you'd like to, talk about. Let's see. I can identify with BK's experience to some extent in terms of dealing with unaccountable corrupt hillbillies. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's pervasive in some areas or across the board. Things just seem a lot more challenging lately, and we all need to get educated. I think we all need to speak up. We need to help each other. If people could stop, breaking each other down and start building each other up and helping each other. But, I'll save this sermon for another day. The time has run out. Yeah. Sorry to hear that. So, but yeah, so thank you for being here, guys and gals. And like I said, let me know what you want on the channel. Hopefully this has been interesting. If you'd like it, I will go into detail in little videos about all the different parts of this. And because I think it's interesting, this case, when I watched it, really shows the law enforcement expertise, why that's important, the defense function, the defense investigative function, the prosecution function. We've got some great experts that were used in the case. Now, whether they testified or not, that didn't happen, but didn't necessarily happen. But potential confirmation bias, tunnel vision, other potential suspects, eyewitness, forensic evidence. I mean, this case has a whole lot of stuff that might be very interesting. So, okay. Well, thank you, Ample Spark. You have fun over there, and appreciate you stopping by, and just let me know. It'll be featured in my anthropology project. It was attempt at a cover up. Oh goodness. Okay. All right. Yeah, you'll have to let me know more about what's going on, and I'm gonna try to get Mr. Mullins on. We've been just going back and forth about a date to do that live, so you guys can ask all the questions, and let me know what cases you want to do, and I'll do my best. All right. Thank you guys. I will see you on the next one, and have a great weekend, okay? And thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the channel. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Lafayette. All right, you all have a great weekend.